What's up guys, Coach Nate here from The Running Experience. Today we address the question around running form. Do we run tall or do we fall forward when we run? And I think this is such an important question because our ability to carry ourselves, to make our last step look as strong and as stable and as smooth as our first step is so key to being a strong, healthy, high-performing runner. And when we see these cues thrown around, if we don't really understand the way we interact with gravity and how to optimally put our body into the right positions, we end up making some mistakes where we end up arching our low back in an effort to run too tall, or we hinge at the hip a little too much excessively, and in essence to fall forward. So let's dig into what gravity does and how it creates movement for us in this next thing. So running tall really means running aligned, where my body is in ideal mechanical positions. And it's helpful just to start with our posture. Where should we be? I've used this PVC pipe here to set myself up where my ankles, knees, hips, shoulders to ears are connected in a nice way. My chin is tucked back over my head, and I'm not letting myself go into this position. Are you in this position right now as you're watching this video? Sit on up a little bit for me. Accumulate a few more reps, and that can make a big difference in translating over to your running. Because here's the deal. If I can maintain better positions for longer periods of time, my last mile is gonna look and feel as good as the first, which means I'm not gonna break down, not gonna get injured, and I'm not gonna slow down either. So key for both injury prevention and for performance. Now, when we run tall, the reason why this alignment thing is key is because we tend to overcorrect sometimes when we fatigue. And we overcorrect, we tend to lift the chest up a little bit and put a major kink in the low back. My pelvis dumps forward, which again creates a whole host of problems where my hips are no longer stable, I can't engage my glutes, my stride tends to reach out far in front of me, and I get into this overstriding, heel striking type of world. So I wanna make sure that I've got this thing nailed. Now that we kind of know this idea of running tall, we wanna make sure we know how to fall forward as well using gravity, which means that we're gonna take our aligned position and we're gonna figure out how to put ourselves into a little bit of extension as well. Now, the biggest mistake with falling forward or taking this cue too much to heart is that I'm running here and I think about this. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm falling forward. I've shifted my sense of perception forward so it feels like I'm further out over my toes. But as you can see, what all I've done is just taken myself out of alignment. I've taken myself out of that good running tall posture, and I've introduced this little bend at the hips, which creates its own set of problems. Low back can start to heat up a little bit. I'm not able to get that beautiful hip extension anymore. And it's even harder to breathe because I've just clamped down on my diaphragm and on my lungs. So I want to think about falling forward in an optimal way. And falling forward is just another way of using gravity. And it's funny to say using gravity because gravity is, a force that is influencing us all the time. Even as you're watching this video, you may have to resist gravity from sitting down like this to sitting up a little bit taller. I certainly am as I'm tall like this. And I notice that when I'm in a balanced position, my body doesn't move, right? But as soon as I start to move my hips over my feet, over my base of support, I start to generate movement. If I shift my hips this way, I go this way. If I shift my hips backwards, I go backwards to the side and forward. And really all running is the ability to shift your body weight forward, specifically your hips, which I'm gonna focus on. And then just by preventing yourself from falling, you're just letting your feet catch up underneath you. The more you shift your hips forward, the greater the fall angle, the faster your feet have to go to prevent you from falling, and the faster you end up running, right? That's that concept. So a key thing is to understand that we don't necessarily just fall this way, we actually fall this way, where I am tall, but I'm driving these hips forward. And if you've seen other videos we've done on the importance of hip extension, pelvic alignment, and glute stability, you know that when I drive my hips forward this way, I get a bigger, more open stride, and every time I land, my foot is a lot more strong and stable. So we really want to avoid both extremes. I don't want to run so tall that I've overextended my lumbar spine, dumped my pelvis forward, and I don't want to be rounded at the low back or hinged at the waist. So we're talking about, hey, how do I get myself into just that Goldilocks position, that sweet spot in the middle. And it's helpful to understand that running is an extension sport. So I'm actually going to get myself into extension on the ground, a little core exercise, just so I can reinforce this point. I'm gonna start on my belly, and I'm gonna get into what is popularly called a Superman position or an arch body position from the gymnastics world. Now, with most athletes, when I do this, I do a little trick. I say, hey, pull your arms and legs up off the ground. Dollars to donuts, they just crank on their low back and they get themselves up here. And I'll notice that I've created a ton of movement at this low back, but that's not the extension we want. We want a little more subtle extension that's a little bit more connected and engaged, because that's running. So the first thing I'm gonna do, squeeze my butt, drive my hips hard into the ground. That's that same concept of driving my hips forward when I run. Abs are on, that supports that lumbar and thoracic spine where I'm strong here. And then I'm just gonna very subtly pull my legs off a 1/4 inch off the ground, and then pull my arms off a little bit here. This is a much more subtle, connected, extended position, which is key for mastering my running. So this, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the wall for the wall drill. Now this is a great way to connect the concepts we've talked about thus far into your running. So I'm gonna stand just next to a wall. You can use anything, building, inside your house, doesn't really matter. And I'm gonna have my arms out straight, and ideally I just wanna be, you know, a couple inches, maybe 4 to 6 inches away from the wall, and I'm gonna practice just shifting my hips and falling forward. And notice that obviously if this wall wasn't here, I would either have to pick up my feet and run, or I'd fall flat on my face. Notice that I'm not going too far, right? It's not a super extreme thing. It's really just a couple inches just to get this feel. And we're gonna get our body into that ideal position. You may notice that as you do this, your hips might wanna shoot back. That's that mistake we talked about. We also talked about avoiding the mistake of arching our low back excessively. So pressing those hips forward, abs are on, everything is aligned as it should. Once I'm here, now I'm just gonna run in place, and I can practice this position for say 15 seconds, and then I'm just gonna turn and run for another 15 seconds. I wanna repeat that 3 to 5 times, just as a way of reinforcing these key concepts. Now, we're really just scratching the surface when it comes to running form. I've got a great video that you can watch right here that talks about the other top running form mistakes, as well as fixes. Everything from breathing, shoulder position, your foot strike, your cadence being too low. Click this video, I'll see you in there. Woo! It's pretty good.